I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to spill all my personal drama on Reddit, but here I am. I just need to get this out of my system, and honestly, I'm hoping I'm not the only one who's been through something this messed up. So strap in, this is gonna get crazy. My wife, Rachel, and I had been together for 5 years. To anyone looking from the outside, our life probably seemed picture perfect. We had a cozy apartment in the city, solid jobs, and an alright social life. I work in marketing, deadlines, meetings, the usual grind. Rachel's in fashion, doing some branding stuff. Sounds fancier than it really is, trust me. But recently, things between us had felt off. I first started to feel something wasn't right at a party hosted by some friends of ours. They just had a baby. So it was one of those celebrate our new lives kind of events. I was doing my usual thing, making small talk with people I barely knew, when I caught sight of Rachel across the room. She was talking to this younger guy named Ethan, who'd just started working at her company. This guy, grinning like a Cheshire cat, was practically hovering over her, leaning in too close, saying something that had her laughing. Really laughing. The kind of laugh she used to give me when we first started dating. I tried to brush it off. I'm not the jealous type, at least that's what I used to think. But the way she was looking at him, it wasn't just friendly. It was something else. Something that rubbed me the wrong way. She had this look in her eyes, this spark I hadn't seen in a long time. Certainly not when she looked at me. On the ride home, I couldn't keep it in any longer. I didn't want to sound like I was being insecure, but damn it, I needed to know what was going on. Rachel, seriously, what was that with Ethan back there? I said, trying to keep my voice casual while my grip on the steering wheel tightened. You two seemed close. She gave me that eye roll, the one that's become her go-to when I try to talk about anything serious. Oh, come on, Bradley, she sighed. He's just a colleague. We were talking about work. Why are you being so paranoid all of a sudden? Paranoid? I shot back, my voice rising. I'm not paranoid. I know what I saw, and it sure as hell didn't look like just a friendly chat. Rachel turned to look out the window, her jaw clenched. You're overthinking this. It was nothing. Honestly, maybe that's the problem, we don't have enough fun anymore. Then came the bombshell. She didn't suggest we take a vacation or have more date nights. No, that would have been too simple. Instead, she casually dropped the idea of opening up our marriage. Just like that. As if she were suggesting a new restaurant for dinner. An open relationship? I said, my voice cracking like a teenager's. Are you fucking serious? She didn't even flinch. I'm just saying, maybe we need to shake things up. Feel something new. We're in a rut, Bradley. Don't you feel it? We're just coasting. I was stunned. This was the same woman who used to preach about how committed she was to me, how much she believed in monogamy. And now, here she was suggesting that we sleep with other people like it was some kind of cure-all. For a split second, I considered agreeing. I thought maybe this is what it would take to fix things. But my gut was screaming at me that something was deeply wrong here. Still, I was desperate to hang on to whatever shred of our relationship was left. So I told her, fine, let's give it a shot. As soon as the words left my mouth, a wave of nausea hit me. I wanted to take it back, but the way her face lit up, it was like she'd been waiting for me to say it. And that look, that damn relieved look, made my stomach turn. The next day, that pit in my stomach only got worse. I tried to convince myself we could handle this, that we were mature enough to make it work. So, I did what any guy would do in this situation. I called up my buddy Dylan. He's the kind of guy who doesn't sugarcoat things and always speaks his mind. We met up at the dive bar we used to hang out at. Same cheap beer, dim lighting, sticky floors. I told Dylan everything, and he listened, shaking his head like I just told him I was about to jump off a cliff. Dude, he said, taking a swig of his beer, you're out of your fucking mind if you think this open relationship crap is gonna fix anything. It's just gonna give her a free pass to cheat on you without calling it cheating. I wanted to argue, but deep down I knew he was right. Rachel was already slipping away, and I was too blind to see it. But I couldn't admit it to myself, not yet. So I shrugged and tried to play it cool. I don't know, man. Maybe this is what we need. Maybe it'll help us figure out what we really want. Dylan gave me that look, the one that says you're an idiot. And honestly, maybe I was, because I knew deep down I hated this whole idea. I hated the thought of Rachel with someone else, even if I had technically agreed to it. That night, after I got home, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that everything would be fine. But there was this nagging feeling that something was seriously off. And that's when everything really started to fall apart. The open relationship was supposed to save us, but all it did was drag us deeper into a darkness I couldn't have predicted. I'll admit it. When Rachel first suggested the idea of opening up our marriage, I was already mentally checking out. But it wasn't until a few days later that things really began to go downhill. This is the part where everything I thought I knew about her, and about us, completely unraveled. It was just another random Tuesday morning. I had just finished brewing some coffee, getting ready to head out for the day, when I noticed Rachel had left her phone on the kitchen counter. Normally, that thing is glued to her hand, so seeing it sitting there all alone was strange. I don't even know what made me look at it. Sure, part of me was curious, but honestly, it was that nagging feeling that something was off that pushed me to check. I didn't go digging through her messages. I just glanced at the notifications. But that was enough. Right there on the lock screen, a text message stopped me dead in my tracks. Can't wait for our date tonight. See you soon. My heart just fucking sank. Date? I stared at the screen, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe just a work thing, some inside joke, or hell, I don't even know what I was trying to tell myself. But deep down, I knew exactly what was going on. This wasn't innocent. This wasn't part of some open relationship experiment or whatever bullshit she'd sold me. This was her planning a date with another guy behind my back. I could have smashed her phone into the wall right then and there, but I knew I needed to keep it together. I kept telling myself to stay calm. Instead, I took a screenshot, sent it to my phone, and then deleted the message. Yeah, I know it was shady, but at that point I needed proof. I knew damn well Rachel would deny everything if I confronted her without something solid. That night, after stewing over the whole thing all day, I tried to act like nothing was wrong. But, man, it was eating me up inside. I couldn't focus on work. I couldn't think straight. My mind kept going back to that text. How casual it was. How it seemed like nothing to her. It made me feel like a fucking fool for ever agreeing to that open relationship. I needed answers, so I did what any desperate husband would do. I played detective. When Rachel went into the shower that night, I grabbed her phone again. This time, I scrolled through her messages, all the way back to her conversation with this guy. His name was Chase, and from what I could gather, he was some smooth-talking entrepreneur who had just moved to the city. Attractive, confident, the kind of guy who probably had women lining up to sleep with him. Their messages weren't just flirty. They were straight-up dirty. Things like, "Can't wait to feel your lips on me again," and "Last night was unforgettable." Yeah, so much for our open relationship. My wife was out there getting her thrills, while I was sitting at home, trying to pretend everything was fine. I wanted to confront her right then, but the anger was too fresh. I knew if I did, I'd blow up, and she'd just turn it around on me. So I decided to wait. I needed to plan my next move. But I couldn't sit on this forever. So I met up with Dylan again that weekend. We pounded whiskey like it was going out of style. When I told him what I found, he just shook his head. "Man, you should have never agreed to that open relationship crap," he said, slamming his glass down on the bar. "It's just a hall pass for her to screw around while you sit at home like a damn chump." "I know," I muttered, staring at my drink. I don't know, man. I thought maybe it would fix things. But she's not even trying. She's just using it as an excuse to sleep with some random guy. "Then what the hell are you still doing here?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "Get out, Bradley. End it before she destroys you any more than she already has." But I wasn't ready to walk away. Not yet. Not without closure or some kind of revenge or something. I had to confront her, but I had to do it smart. A few days later, Rachel started planning this big birthday party for herself. She was practically glowing with excitement, and she kept mentioning that Ethan, the guy from her office, would be there. That made my stomach churn because I couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan and Chase were two sides of the same coin. But I stayed quiet, waiting for her to slip up. It was during one of our awkward dinners that I decided to test the waters. I casually brought up the open relationship idea, pretending to be genuinely interested in how she was feeling about it. She froze for just a second, her eyes flickered with guilt, but she quickly recovered, acting all breezy. "Oh, it's been interesting," she said, taking a sip of her wine. "But honestly, I haven't really explored much. I've just been so busy with work." "Yeah, right. Busy screwing around with some hotshot entrepreneur, more like it." But I played along, nodding like I actually believed her. "That's good to hear," I said, forcing a smile. "I've been taking it slow, too." Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, like she was trying to figure out what was going on in my head, wondering if I was hiding anything. For a split second, I thought maybe she knew what I was up to. But then, she just shrugged it off, picking up her pasta like nothing had changed. As the party approached, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling that something wasn't right. One night, I overheard her whispering on the phone in the hallway. She thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. "Yeah, I can't wait either. No, it'll be perfect timing," she said, her voice low and eager. That's when it all clicked. This birthday party wasn't just a celebration. It was a damn cover for her to meet up with Chase. So, I did what anyone in my position would do. I started digging. Turns out, she had arranged her date with him for the same night as the party. I guess she thought I'd be too busy chatting with her friends to notice that she'd sneak off for a couple of hours. But she didn't know that I was already ahead of her. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her make a fool of me. This time, I was doing something about it. No more pretending. No more playing along. It was time to take control. I just needed to figure out how to catch her in the act without her slipping away with more lies. Once I found out about her date, I couldn't just ignore it. I couldn't sit there pretending everything was fine while imagining Rachel with this Chase guy. If she thought she could sneak around while I bought into this open relationship nonsense, she was dead wrong. I spent hours going through her texts, trying to find out where they were meeting. The guy picked this high-end bar in the trendy part of the city, one of those spots where young professionals hang out, sipping overpriced cocktails like there's something special. I figured that's where I'd confront him, where I'd make it clear that he wasn't just dealing with some clueless husband. When I walked in, the place was buzzing with people dressed to impress. I felt like a damn mess, sweat dripping down my back, my fists clenched tight enough to hurt. And then I saw him, Chase or Zane, whatever his name was, leaning against the bar, scrolling through his phone, looking smug and way too comfortable. That sight alone nearly sent me over the edge. I didn't hesitate. I walked right up to him. "Hey, you Zane?" I asked, my voice thick with barely contained rage. He looked up, confusion crossing his face until he realized who I was. Yeah. "Do I know you?" I got close enough for him to feel my breath on his face. "Yeah, you know exactly who I am. You're about to meet my wife, Rachel. Ring any bells?" His eyes widened, like he'd been caught red-handed, but he still tried to talk his way out of it. "Look, man, it's not what you think," he started. But I cut him off. "I don't give a damn what you think it is," I growled. "You stay the hell away from her. If I find out you've even texted her again, I'll make your life a living hell." "Got it." To his credit, he didn't back down right away. There was this brief flicker of defiance in his eyes, like he thought I was bluffing. But when he saw I wasn't backing down, he raised his hands in mock surrender. All right, man. I hear you," he said, though that smirk on his face just made me want to punch him in the throat. I left the bar feeling like I'd accomplished something, but let's be real. I knew it wasn't a real fix. Rachel was the problem, not this guy. He was just a symptom of whatever had gone wrong between us. But I needed a distraction, something to get my mind off the fact that my marriage was crumbling. So I did what any desperate guy would do. I turned to a dating app. I swiped through profiles aimlessly, not expecting much, until I matched with a girl named Sophie. She was confident, attractive, and, most importantly, not Rachel. Our conversations were easy, flirty back and forth, and before I knew it, I was inviting her over to my place that same night. I wasn't thinking straight. I was just reacting, letting my anger and frustration drive me. When Sophie showed up, it was like a breath of fresh air. She had this carefree vibe, and she didn't bring the baggage Rachel did. The lies, the deceit. We started talking, had a few drinks, and before long, things heated up. It wasn't just about the sex, though God knows I needed that release. It was about feeling wanted, feeling like someone cared about me. We moved to the bedroom, clothes coming off in a blur. I wasn't thinking about Rachel, or the mess I'd have to clean up when all of this was over. It was just me and Sophie, and for once I felt free. But deep down, I knew it was just an escape, nothing more than a quick fix for the real problem. Meanwhile, Rachel was out on her date with Zane. I half expected her to stay out all night, but to my surprise, she came back earlier than I thought. I was in bed with Sophie when I heard the door open. For a moment, panic hit me, but then something in me snapped. Why the hell should I care? She was the one who wanted this open relationship shit. She was the one sneaking around behind my back. Rachel walked into the bedroom expecting to find me asleep, but instead, she froze when she saw me in bed with Sophie. We were tangled in the sheets, barely covered. Her face turned an ugly shade of red as her eyes widened in shock, and then pure rage took over. "What the, Bradley?" she screamed, her voice shaking with fury. "What the hell is this?" I didn't even flinch. I sat up and stared her down. "Oh, so now you're mad?" I shot back, the venom practically dripping from my words. "That's rich, Rachel. You wanted an open relationship, didn't you? Or is it just okay when you're the one running around?" Her face twisted into something I hadn't seen before, a mix of disgust and fury, like she was about to throw something at me. "I never agreed to you bringing another woman into our bed," she yelled. "Oh, but it's totally fine for you to run off and sleep with some random guy behind my back, right? Is that it?" I snapped, the anger I had kept bottled up for weeks finally erupting. "I saw your messages, Rachel. I know about Chase or Zane or whatever the hell his name is." Her expression turned pale, and she froze like I just slapped her. You went through my phone?" she stammered, her voice rising as if trying to flip the blame. But I wasn't letting her pull that bullshit. "Yeah, I did," I said, standing up and throwing on my jeans. "And I don't regret it for a second. It showed me exactly what you've become." The argument got ugly fast. All the hurt, all the lies, all the resentment came flooding out. She called me paranoid, insecure, suffocating. I threw back at her that she was a selfish, deceitful bitch who couldn't keep her legs shut. Words were thrown that could never be taken back. Sharp, brutal things we both knew would leave scars. When the shouting finally died down, there was nothing left but a suffocating silence. Rachel stood there, tears in her eyes, looking completely broken. I think I should go," she said, barely above a whisper, as if she wasn't even sure of her own words. "Yeah, maybe you should," I replied coldly, my heart feeling like it was being ripped to shreds. She packed a bag, grabbed her keys, and walked out, never looking back. After she left, Sophie, who had been sitting there in stunned silence, started getting dressed. She mumbled something about not wanting to get caught up in my mess and slipped out the door. Honestly, I didn't blame her. At that moment, I didn't know what the hell I was doing either. In the days that followed, Rachel and I exchanged a few cold, businesslike texts about dividing up our things. She told her friends that we tried the whole open relationship thing, but it just didn't work out. I told mine that I was done pretending like everything was fine. Dylan, blunt as always, told me it was time to walk away for good. But here's the problem. I still don't know how to let go. Part of me wants to hate her, to erase her from my life completely. But there's another part of me, the one that remembers the good times, the moments before we became strangers to each other. And that's what makes everything so fucked up. Because after everything, I'm not sure if I'm more pissed at her for betraying me or at myself for letting it all happen. After Rachel stormed out that night, taking whatever was left of our marriage with her, I didn't know what to do with myself. It felt like I was standing in the wreckage, staring at the ruins of my life, wondering how the hell everything had gone to hell so quickly. For the first few days, I just drifted through life. I went to work, came home, drank too much, and kept repeating the cycle. But after a week of that bullshit, I realized I couldn't keep sinking into it. I had to pull myself out of this mess, or at least pretend to. So I buried myself in work. Early mornings, late nights. Anything to keep my mind off the disaster Rachel had left behind. At work, people started noticing I was more focused than ever. The truth? I just needed a damn distraction. Ava, one of the girls I worked with who had always had a thing for me, started offering to help more. She'd linger after meetings, ask if I needed anything. I could tell she was trying to be there for me, but without making it too obvious. I appreciated it, though. At least someone was there, even if it was just for distraction. Ava was one of those rare people who listens without judgment. Right now, that was more than I deserved. She didn't press, but she knew something had gone wrong. "Hey, if you ever need to talk, or want to grab a drink, I'm around," she said one afternoon, her voice soft, hesitant. "Yeah, I might take you up on that," I said, forcing a smile. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wasn't about to drag someone else into this chaos. Instead, I reached out to someone who knew me before all this, my old college buddy, James. We hadn't spoken in years, but in a moment of desperation, I found his number and texted him. To my surprise, he responded almost immediately. "Hey man, let's catch up. How about a hiking trip this weekend? Get some fresh air. Clear your head," he suggested. A hiking trip was the last thing on my mind, but at that point, I figured maybe it was what I needed. So, I threw some gear into a bag and met him that Saturday morning. The hike was brutal, but honestly, it was exactly what I needed. Out there, surrounded by nothing but nature, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The air was fresh, the sky endless, and for the first time in days, I could think without the weight of everything crashing down on me. At one point, as we took a break at a lookout point, James turned to me, his face serious. "All right, man, spill it," he said. "You've been walking around like you've got the world on your shoulders." And I did. I unloaded everything about Rachel, the ridiculous open relationship idea, about finding the messages with Chase. The whole ugly mess. I was surprised at how easy it was to just say it all out loud. No filters, no holding back. James just listened, nodding every so often, letting me vent without interruption. "Look," he said when I finally stopped, "I know it hurts like hell right now, but you did the right thing. Sometimes people just change. They lose themselves, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. But you've got to figure out what's next for you, man." It was solid advice, probably the best I'd gotten in a long time. And for the first time since everything with Rachel blew up, I felt a small sliver of clarity, like maybe I wasn't as lost as I thought. Meanwhile, I'd heard through the grapevine that Rachel was crashing at her friend Lauren's place. Lauren's one of those people who acts all sweet and supportive on the surface but is secretly judging the hell out of everyone. So yeah, I'm sure Rachel was getting an earful over there. From what I gathered, Rachel had been struggling. Lauren told a mutual friend that Rachel had been crying on her couch, drinking too much wine, and trying to figure out how she managed to ruin everything. Honestly, part of me wanted to feel bad for her, but the other part of me, I was just tired. She made her choices, and now she had to live with them. But here's the curveball life threw me. Just when I was starting to get my head together, work decided to throw a major project my way. My boss came up to me with a massive product launch for one of our biggest clients. They wanted me to lead it. Big deal, make or break situation. And you know what? I threw myself into it. Long hours, weekends, all of it. It felt good to focus on something, anything, other than the mess my personal life had become. And of course, my team noticed. Ava especially. She'd stop by my desk more often, bringing me coffee, asking if I needed help with anything. I could see through it. She was trying to be there for me in her own subtle way. Honestly, I appreciated it. At least someone gave a damn. Ava was one of those people who listens without judgment, which was exactly what I needed. She never asked about Rachel or pushed me to talk. But she knew something was wrong. One afternoon, she said, "Hey, if you ever want to grab a drink or talk, I'm around." "Yeah, I might take you up on that," I said, giving a forced smile. But deep down, I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I wasn't about to drag someone else into my mess. Then, one night after work, I decided to grab a drink by myself to unwind. The bar wasn't too far from the office. I was nursing my second beer when I looked up and saw her. Sophie, the girl I'd hooked up with during all that chaos with Rachel. She spotted me and came over, that same playful smile on her face like we were old friends. "Hey, stranger," she teased, sliding into the stool next to mine. "Been hiding from me?" "Yeah, something like that," I admitted. I didn't feel like explaining the whole situation, and frankly, I didn't want to. But there was something about her, something easy and comforting. Maybe it was the fact that she didn't come with the emotional baggage Rachel had been carrying around. We talked for hours, catching up on everything and nothing at all. She told me about her work, her dreams of starting a business, and I told her about the campaign I was pouring myself into. I was surprised by how natural it felt, how easy it was to talk to her. A few drinks in, she leaned in closer, her hand brushing against my arm. "You know, Bradley," she said, her voice soft, "I'm really glad we ran into each other again. I could feel where this was headed, and yeah, I was tempted, more than tempted. But I was also cautious. I wasn't looking to jump into another emotional train wreck. So, instead of asking her to come home with me that night, I said, let's take things slow. Yeah? Maybe meet up again later." She smiled, gave me a playful wink, and left without any pressure. Now, here I am, caught between the wreckage of my past with Rachel and the possibility of something new with Sophie. Rachel's still lurking in the back of my mind, but I'm starting to see a way forward. I'm not saying I'm healed, not by a long shot. But maybe, just maybe, I'm ready to start picking up the pieces. Because if there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that life doesn't stop just because you've been gutted. You have to keep moving, even if every step feels like you're walking on broken glass. And who knows? Maybe this time, I'll figure out what the hell I'm doing. It had been a few weeks since Rachel stormed out, and honestly, I thought I was starting to get my shit together. New work routine, reconnecting with old friends, spending time with Sophie. Everything seemed to be helping me keep my mind off the wreckage of my marriage. But life's a cruel bastard, and just when I thought I was moving on, Rachel slid back into my life like some shadow I couldn't shake off. It happened on a Wednesday evening. I was just wrapping up a late meeting when my phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. My heart skipped a beat. "Hey, can we talk? I think we need to clear the air." I stared at the screen for what felt like forever, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to tell her to go to hell, that she'd done enough damage. But another part of me, the weaker part, still needed answers. So, against my better judgment, I typed back, "Yeah, okay. When and where?" We agreed to meet at this little cafe we used to go to when we first started dating. The place was full of memories, mostly good ones. I showed up a bit early, my nerves eating at me. The air smelled like fresh coffee and cinnamon, but all I could focus on was the knot in my stomach. When Rachel walked in, I didn't expect the punch to the gut it gave me. She looked different, worn out, like she'd been through a war I wasn't a part of. There was something about her that made me pause, made me feel like I almost cared for a second. Almost. "Hey," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "Thanks for agreeing to meet." I didn't trust myself to speak right away. I just nodded, trying to keep it together. I wasn't here for pleasantries, I needed answers. She sighed, staring down at her coffee cup, as if the weight of the world was sitting there. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice so soft it felt like she was speaking from the other side of a wall. "I know I messed up. I just needed some space to figure things out, and I didn't think it would go this far." Couldn't help it. The laughter came out harsh, bitter, and completely out of place. "Space. That's what you call sleeping with some guy behind my back? Jesus, Raquel." Her eyes welled up, but I wasn't about to let her tears melt me. Not after everything. Not anymore. I know," she said, her voice breaking. I was confused. I thought I was losing myself, that we were just coasting. I thought maybe an open relationship would help me figure things out. I didn't think it would get so messed up. "Find yourself," I barked, my voice low but filled with rage. By spreading your legs for Chase or Zane or whoever the hell he is. That's your version of finding yourself? Her face contorted in guilt, and for a brief moment, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then she shocked me. Instead of lashing out or defending herself, she lowered her gaze, the weight of everything hitting her in silence. I know what I did was wrong, Bradley. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to understand. I was scared. I thought I'd lost you, that everything we had was slipping away, and I panicked. I wanted to hate her, to scream at her until my voice went raw, but I couldn't. There was something in her eyes, something real, something genuine, that made it harder than I wanted it to be. We sat there, peeling back the layers of everything we'd been through. I told her how much it hurt, how betrayed I felt when I read the messages, how she had completely shattered the life we built together. And for once, she just listened. She didn't try to explain or defend herself. She just listened. Somehow, through all the anger and raw emotions, there was a strange kind of release. It felt like we were breaking down the walls between us, like for the first time in a long time, we were really being honest with each other. It wasn't pretty, but it was real. By the end of it, we were both drained, physically and emotionally, as though the air had been sucked out of the room. Then she said it. I don't know if we can fix this, she murmured, her eyes fixed on the cup in front of her. But maybe we could try. Take it slow, rebuild the trust. I'm not asking for everything back right away. Just a chance. I was caught. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to stand up and walk out, leave her sitting there with her apologies and her tears. But there was another part of me, the part that remembered the good times, the moments when we laughed together, when I could still see a future with her, that wasn't quite ready to let go. Maybe, I said quietly, unsure if I meant it, but I don't know if I can ever trust you again, Rachel? And without trust, what do we have left? She nodded, a tear escaping as she wiped it away quickly. I understand, but maybe we can just start as friends. See where that leads. I didn't respond. I just stood up, slapped some cash on the table, and walked out. I needed to breathe. I needed space just like she did, but for different reasons. The idea of rebuilding, of trying to go back to what we had, it terrified me. But at the same time, I couldn't deny that for the first time in a while, something inside me flickered with the slightest bit of hope. Later that night, I called James. He listened to me, all the confusion, the anger, and that tiny sliver of hope I was too scared to face. Look, man, he said, you don't have to figure everything out tonight. Just take your time. But don't let her walk all over you again. Good advice. Easier said than done. Especially with Sophie still in the picture, offering me the kind of distraction I thought I wanted. I kept seeing Sophie. Honestly, it helped. She was light, carefree, and didn't bring the emotional baggage Rachel had. We'd go out, laugh, and have fun. Something I hadn't really experienced in months. But every time we went out, every time I found myself at her place, there was this lingering guilt in the back of my mind. Like I was still tied to Rachel, even though we were over. It was twisted. The thing was, Sophie was starting to get more serious, dropping hints about wanting a future. And while I liked her, I wasn't sure I was ready for another relationship. Especially not with the ghost of Rachel still haunting every step I took. One night, after another long day at the office, I ended up at the bar with Sophie again. We were laughing, talking, and then she kissed me. It wasn't just a kiss. It was one of those kisses that makes everything around you disappear. For a moment, I let myself forget everything. Everything about Rachel, everything about the mess I was in. But when we pulled apart, all I could think about was Rachel. About the conversation we had in that cafe, about the possibility of maybe, just maybe, fixing things. Sophie saw my hesitation and pulled back, her eyes searching mine. What's wrong? She asked, her voice soft, almost hurt. I ran a hand through my hair, sighing. I don't know if I'm ready for this. There's still too much I need to figure out. She gave me a look that was a mix of understanding and disappointment. Bradley, I like you. But if you're still hung up on your ex, maybe you're not ready for this. She was right, of course. But hearing it from her made it feel real in a way it hadn't before. I watched her walk away, and for the first time in a long time, I was truly alone.
No Rachel. No Sophie.
Just me, standing at a crossroads, unsure of which direction to take. I wish I could tell you I had everything figured out, that I knew exactly what I was doing. But the truth? I'm just a guy, fumbling through the wreckage of his own life. Whether it's Rachel, Sophie, or just trying to find peace with myself again, I have no idea where I'm headed. But maybe that's okay. The product launch was right around the corner, and for the first time in a long while, my life had some direction. I threw myself into the campaign. Late nights, weekends, every ounce of focus I could muster. After everything I'd been through, I needed this win more than I cared to admit. It wasn't about impressing my bosses or getting a fat bonus. It was about proving to myself that I could still build something that didn't fall apart. And damn, it paid off. The launch was a hit. Clients were thrilled. My team was fired up, and I could practically see the pride in my boss's eyes as we wrapped up the event. For the first time in ages, I felt solid, like my feet were planted on the ground again. Surrounded by congratulations, handshakes, and backslaps, I felt a rare sense of pride in myself. Naturally, I invited Sophie to the launch party. She'd been a breath of fresh air, helping me see that maybe, just maybe, life after Rachel wasn't the end. We'd been seeing more of each other, and things were starting to get serious, though I was still treading lightly. As much as I cared about her, there was that nagging voice in the back of my head that wouldn't stop whispering Rachel's name. Sophie showed up looking incredible. When she walked in, all eyes were on her, and I couldn't help but feel proud. For once, I allowed myself to enjoy the moment, the sense of accomplishment, the spark of something new. We mingled, and I could feel her laughter blending with the hum of the room. Everything felt right, until I saw Rachel. I didn't expect her to show up. I hadn't told her about the launch. But there she was, standing at the entrance like a ghost from the past. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on me, and Sophie. I froze. For a second, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My heart seemed to pound in my chest, a weird, painful dance. I watched her expression shift. Shock, hurt, maybe jealousy. Couldn't tell. But she quickly composed herself, slipping into that cool, distant demeanor she had perfected. "Bradley," she said, her smile tight and forced. "I just wanted to congratulate you. I heard about the launch, and I'm really proud of you." "Thanks, Rachel," I said, keeping my voice steady, but it was harder than I thought. "This is Sophie, by the way." Sophie extended her hand, and Rachel took it, graciously, though the tension between us was thick enough to suffocate. I could feel Sophie stiffen beside me, her hand tightening around my arm. After a few awkward minutes of polite conversation, Sophie excused herself to grab a drink. I was left standing with Rachel, surrounded by the laughter of people celebrating, but it felt like the two of us were in a bubble, completely isolated. "Look, I didn't mean to intrude," Rachel said, her voice quiet, almost drowned out by the music. I don't know. I wanted to see how you were doing." "I'm doing all right," I replied, my voice carrying the bitterness I couldn't hide. "Better than I was, at least." Rachel nodded, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I'm glad," she whispered. "I've been working on myself. Therapy, you know? Trying to figure out why I made all those stupid decisions." "That's good, Rachel. I mean it," I said, and this time I meant it. Maybe it was seeing her like this vulnerable, broken, that softened me. Or maybe I was just tired of carrying all that anger around. She met my gaze, and there was something raw in her eyes. "I'm really sorry, Bradley, for everything. I thought I needed more. But what I really needed was to figure out who I am without hurting you in the process." Hearing her say that, it hit harder than I expected. We stood there, speaking quietly, like the world around us didn't exist. She told me about her therapy sessions, how she realized she'd been chasing things to fill a void that wasn't my fault. I told her about my struggles to move on, about how Sophie had helped me take steps forward, even though I was terrified of getting hurt again. Somehow, despite the pain and everything that had happened, there was still something, a spark. But it wasn't enough to erase the years of hurt and betrayal. We both knew that. "So, what now?" she asked softly, almost pleading. "Is there any chance for us?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I realized that I didn't want to go back. There was too much damage, too much history, but I also knew I couldn't just cut her out of my life completely. "Rachel," I said, my voice firm but gentle, "I care about you. I always will. But I think we need to give each other space. I can't keep living in the past. And I think you need to figure out who you are without me." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand," she said softly. I think you're right. I need to focus on me for a while." In that moment, we reached an unspoken agreement. We weren't going to fix what was broken. But maybe, just maybe, we could still be a part of each other's lives. As friends. As people who once meant something to each other. When I walked away from Rachel and rejoined Sophie, I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Sophie looked at me, her eyes searching mine for something. For once, I didn't feel conflicted. As the night wore on, I took her hand, and we stepped outside. The cool air hit me as we walked down the street, the city lights glowing around us. For the first time in months, I felt something like hope. "Are you okay?" Sophie asked, her voice soft and full of care. "Yeah," I replied, squeezing her hand. "I think I finally am." I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be moments when Rachel's memory would sting, when the past would creep in. But for now, I was ready to move forward. With Sophie, with my career, with my life. And as we walked together, her laughter echoing in the quiet of the night, I realized that maybe the future wasn't so terrifying after all. I was done being haunted by the past. One step at a time, I was choosing to move forward.